Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Women's Fitness Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ellen. I am a female empowerment coach and I specialize in binge eating, confidence, and body image issues. Today I'm here with someone who I met through a mutual friend, and I just instantly felt so connected to her. She also lives here in Bali, but she's also from Europe, same as me. And she just does so many amazing things. And then I heard how young she is, and I'm like, what? How does that work? Her name is Alana, and she's a meditation and neuroscience expert. So, Alana, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I ever since I first met you that first time at Becca's brunch, I was like, I need to get this on the podcast. And I was asking our other mutual friend Hannah Lyons, who I live with, about you as well, and she's like, yeah, she's really cool. So I was like, I'm just gonna.
Oh my gosh, stop! I never even knew that. I didn't even know you lived with Hannah. That's so nice.
Yeah, she literally lives next door to me.
That's so nice. Well, thank you for having me. What a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. So for the listeners who don't know you, who are you? Like, when did you move to Bali? Like, when did you're obviously from Ireland? Give yourself a little introduction.
Okay, I always hate this question. So I'm Alana. I'm living in Bali at the moment. And yeah, I do a lot of different things. I work in the corporate wellness, and I work with personal trainers and do their community outreach. So I would go into their clients and give webinars on basically, the neuroscience of meditation, mindfulness, and many things alike. And basically what I do is I bridge the gap between what some people might refer to as, the airy-fairy side of self-development and actual evidence-based psychology. So I'm doing a master's in the neuroscience of mental health, and I hope that by bringing the science and the evidence-based tools to people, especially in the corporate industry, it really encourage them to, I suppose, make a consistent habit of these things. Because when we know the reasoning behind these methods, it can really transform our ability to actually stick to them. So that's what I do. I run meditation courses. I work in the corporate and PT industry, and I also run retreats.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm honestly so bummed that I missed out on your retreat when you had one here. I hope that you make did them a few more of them so I could join.
Yeah, they're in the works, don't worry. Right.
Amazing. Yeah, I love what you do, and I think it's really cool that we have like that you are kind of bridging that gap, because just speaking from like personal experiences, I was like, I don't want to get into like meditation and like inner child healing and journaling. I was like, oh, that's so woo-woo. Like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
And now I'm obviously loving it. But I think like a big resistance for me was studies. I was like, is there any science behind this? Like, does it actually work? So
yeah, exactly. And I think the integration of like science and spirituality can be such a beautiful thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think they do in some ways like complement each other. But I suppose I would have like a logical brain as well, and I'm always like, right, what's the sign? Like, why are you like, what's the reasoning behind it? What are we doing? And then when people talk about and like give me facts nowadays, I'm like, okay, like what's the study, or like what was the quality of that study? And I've gone into such a lot. Like I never used to be like this, and I don't even know if I like it, but I suppose it's good.
Yeah. No, I think it's really cool that you can question these things, and also like how that you are so aware of everything. Is it kind of similar to the holistic psychologist, like that kind of vibes? Is that what you do?
Probably not. Probably not. So what I would like, as in my day-to-day like career.
Yeah. Like how would you teach?
Yeah. So well, basically, what I teach is like a combination of neck up and neck down approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So neuroscience and psychology research they all point to one thing, and that is that, to treat stress and anxiety, the combined approach is best, which is the combined approach, meaning mind and body approaches. So mind approaches are things like cognitive behavioral therapy, which allows us to like attack our thoughts first. And body approaches will be things like ice baths, like breath work, like the focus on targeting your body sensations first to, I suppose, help alleviate your anxiety. And that's probably what I would mainly focus on in my seminars, would be like an integration of both of these things. So I suppose quite similar. But what I do is kind of like debunk the science as well, and it's like without boring people. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Amazing. So, okay, for someone who's like, how does anything like with meditation has anything to do with science? Can you kind of give a explanation in that?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'll talk about our brain first of all. So our brain, I suppose, maintains a certain degree of electrical activity at all times. And whether we are mentally engaged, at rest, or asleep, we have brain waves. And these brain waves are the measurements of these electrical pulses in our brain. And when we're awake and we're performing tasks, we're going about our daily lives, we're playing tennis, we're working, whatever we're doing, our brain wave state is in what we call a beta state. So it's very active. And when we go into a meditative state, our brainwave frequency goes into what we call a theta or an alpha state. And this means our brain is just emitting a lot of these waves, these alpha or beta wave or theta waves, sorry. So these brain waves are associated with relaxation. And the cool thing is when we develop a consistent practice of meditation, and the more time we spend meditating, we can spend a lot more time in these waves. And as a result, people who meditate have, enhanced creativity or problem solving abilities or improved sleep quality or reduction in anxiety. And, a lot of it does point back to, I suppose, those waves. And that's kind of a simple way of putting it. And then I suppose there's a lot of other benefits of meditation in terms of neuroscience, like it increases our dopamine levels. And obviously we know that dopamine is our feel-good neurotransmitter. And a lot of people, I suppose, have problems with motivation these days. Our motivation is up and it's down. And that is primarily because dopamine is our main motivation chemical. And we need a certain level, as you would probably know yourself, we need a certain level of baseline dopamine to maintain motivation. And what meditation can do is it can replenish those dopamine levels. So yeah, and also it increases neuroplasticity. So without getting too much into it, that is basically our brain's ability to adapt. And it basically means that whatever neural connections we use the most get stronger. So if we wake up and we focus on those, we focus on mastering our negative thought patterns and replacing them with inputs like breath work, like meditation, the neural networks for that new positive mindset will start to get stronger the more we practice them. And I suppose meditation has been shown to increase that neuroplasticity.
Wow. So interesting. And you mentioned so many like really interesting things there. So I think something that a lot of people really struggle with is anxiety and motivations. So for someone who, like, I don't know, when I first started doing meditation, I was like, the thought of sitting 5 minutes and not listening or not doing anything, not like being on my phone, I was like, that's just gonna give me more anxiety, and like I have so much to do, like I can't sit still. Like what's something that someone who is really struggling with anxiety, like what can they do to start getting into this process?
Okay, so what I would say is start really small. Like the way we actually can stick to a consistent practice is by developing that like positive feedback loop. So if we expect to sit, and we've never done meditation before, and we expect to sit down for 20 minutes and do a meditation, you're never going to stick to it. You'll stick to it a few days at most, and then you'll get discouraged, as we all know. So I would say start small, and start with literally a minute every morning at the bottom of your bed, just deep breaths. And what meditation is all about is it's becoming aware of our thoughts and slowly detaching from them, so they lose their power over us. And as we all know, like our stress and anxiety, the root of a lot of stress and anxiety is our thoughts and our ability to, I suppose, control our thoughts. And meditation allows us to gain, I suppose, like an observer perspective, and thus allowing our thoughts to have less control over us. And how we do that is we develop slowly a consistent practice of meditation. And when our thoughts do enter our mind, which they do, like I've meditated for years now, and I'm still thinking about what I'm having for dinner, or whether, so, and a lot of people will be asking themselves, whether I'm doing this right. It's literally just sitting there being, in the present moment, and I suppose not allowing your thoughts to have control over you, and, realizing that it's normal, and to accept them non-judgmentally and let them pass by. And when we do this in meditation, we can then bring that into our lives. And yeah, that can be a powerful thing to help us with our stress and anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed such a difference in myself since I started doing more
Really?
meditation. Yeah, and like breath work and stuff like that. Like I always used to have ever since I was a little child, I've had really bad insomnia. And I'd really wake for like hours and hours and hours and not being able to sleep. And honestly, the last 6 months since moving here and like being surrounded with so much of it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna give it a go. And I literally fall asleep like this. I can fall asleep anywhere. Like, it's so weird. So if anyone's listening and you're like, ugh, meditation is not for me, I can't sit still, like I don't want to do the inner work or inner child healing, anything like that, fucking give it a go. Because I was so resistant to it, and I am obsessed with it now.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that for you.
It's honestly it's changed my life so much. So I'm sure anyone who follows my Instagram would have seen like a huge change in my content.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like you probably have to, you have to consistently stick with it for a while in order to see those changes. So I suppose that's why people just kind of, probably don't see the benefits that they want to see at the start. So yeah, that's amazing that you love it that much.
Yeah, and also like I think what I've struggled with, like with clients especially, it's like they don't see the results straight away. It's like if you go to the gym and you want to get stronger at your deadlift, like you're probably gonna put on a little bit of weight like every second week or every week. But with like stuff like this, it takes so long to start seeing changes, and because it's like you have your own thoughts all the time, it can be so hard to to see that it actually has changed. But like if anyone's on this journey, like please keep going, because it's so worth it. Like once you are a few months in, you're like, wow, you're so right.
Yeah, exactly. And what I would suggest to anyone that is struggling to keep going with it, and I suppose with anything, is come back to your why. Like why have you started meditating? And that really helped me, like when I'm just like, I'm not arsed today, or you remind yourself when you feel really good from it, write that down in your notes and come back to that when you're like, oh, I'm not arsed, you know what I mean? So that helps me as well.
You mentioned something about God, let me see if I can get this word right. Remember, I've speaking second language. Neuroplasticity, is that how you say it?
Yes.
So like basically like creating new pathways in your brain. That's what it is, right?
Yeah. And it's strengthening. So it's creating new pathways, and it's also strengthening pathways that are already there.
So basically like creating new habits.
Yes. So I'll talk to you a little about that. So neuroplasticity, it's really our brain's ability to adapt. And as I said, whatever neural connections we use the most get stronger, and they get stronger through repeated use. So something that we will find really, something that we do every day, like making our morning coffee, our neural pathways are so strong around that habit that we don't even think about doing it. So it's all about making these habits of these tools and getting those really strong neural connections around that tool, so that we can rewire our brains for a more positive life. And what else is, so fascinating about meditation is that, it makes us more physiologically more resilient in the face of adversity. And by rewiring our neural pathways towards a more positive mindset, and by continuously practicing it, we can become more physiologically resilient, and we are a lot more equipped to handle stressors that day, because the neural pathways that wire for that positive mindset are really strong because we've repeated these practices so often. So that is what neuroplasticity, the shorter version of neuroplasticity.
No, I think it's so interesting, especially because so many of the girls listening to this podcast, like gym goers, or they work with girls who are like struggling to create new habits, and or even just like something as getting up and going to the gym in the morning, like that is essentially a habit, so it works the same way. So I think it'd be really interesting for everyone to understand really how it works, because I think 100%. There's a lot of talk about like breaking the habit loop and creating a new like cue and like the trigger and all that stuff, and Atomic Habits, that book or something.
Brilliant habit, or brilliant book. Sorry.
Amazing.
Book.
It's interesting for people to understand a bit deeper like how it actually works, and like how would you use meditation for that? Like, do you create like an affirmation for it, or like how does that work?
As in, how would you use meditation to increase your neuroplasticity?
Yeah, so let's say that I wanted to break a habit of like always skipping the gym, for example. How would I then use meditation? Like, would you use like affirmations for it, or like do you just like sit with your thoughts, or like how does that work?
So what I would advise on, I'm sure you've heard of habit stacking, and Atomic Habits is always talking about habit stacking. And that is basically, stacking a habit that you consistently do with a habit that you want to do. So, like having a routine and combining your gym with something that you do every day, something that you enjoy as well. So really, really helps me. And then I suppose how meditation can help with the gym is, mantras, as you said, are really, really helpful. And, when we talk about, not going to the gym, or, there's an underlying belief in all of these actions that we have. And I suppose using our mantras to overcome these limiting beliefs can be such a powerful tool. And so basically I'll go into probably our subconscious mind a little bit. So basically our limiting beliefs, as you know, like they form between the ages of 0 and 7. And when we are at this age, any information that is presented to the brain is perceived to be true, because we have no contradicting evidence to say otherwise. And when we're in this age, we spend a lot of time in what we call a theta state. And that is the same state that we're in when we're meditating. So between the ages of 0 and 7, we spend a lot more time in this theta state. And this state is the optimal frequency for accessing our subconscious mind. And that is why it's so much easier for information around us when between the ages of 0 and 7 to seep into our subconscious mind, causing us to create such strong beliefs about ourselves that can actually impact us for the rest of our lives. And I suppose fair enough if you're skipping the gym, once or twice, but, that underlying belief that maybe, you're not good enough, or they all stem from something. And I suppose like, obviously, working through that involves accessing our subconscious mind, and meditation is such a powerful way to do that. So yeah, I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there. I don't even know if I answered your question, but yeah, mantras can be such a powerful motivating factor, and especially before you go to sleep and when you wake up. Our brain is in that theta wave state already, so that can be a really powerful time to reprogram your mind, because as I said, those theta states, that's when we have access to our subconscious mind. So if we're struggling for motivation, right when you wake up or right when you go to sleep, stick in the earphones and listen to mantras. And that allows us to reprogram our brains, because we are in that theta state more.
Yeah, I've heard this explained so many times, but I feel like your explanation was the best one I've ever heard.
Okay, thanks, Jesus.
Yeah, I was like,
it's tough to get your head around.
Good explanation, like.
okay, good.
But yeah, with the mantras, before and after, or before you go to sleep and when you first wake up, just a tip for everyone. This is what I've started doing. So when your phone alarm goes off, you just turn it off, and then it goes into like whatever you were looking at last on your phone. So I've just gone into read my affirmation or mantra, or whatever you want to call it, in my notes, and then I just click the lock, so that as soon as I turn my alarm off, it goes straight into that. So it's the first thing I see. I just read it straight off, and it's just like I repeat it.
Brilliant. That's amazing. That is amazing, because like it's 70% of people wake up and go on their phone first thing in the morning. And like when we talk about neuroplasticity, I always say to like my clients, wake up and you ask yourself, what neural pathways do I want to strengthen today? And if you're someone who is looking at your phone the first thing in the morning, you are strengthening those pathways of negativity, of comparison, the moment you wake up. And that is the trajectory you're taking with your day, instead of, strengthening those positive neural pathways so that you're better equipped to handle the stressors that day, or, you're more receptive to the positive opportunities in your life that day. And something so small like going on your phone first thing in the morning can have such an impact on your mindset. So neuroplasticity, like, it's, I suppose it's phenomenal that you bring everything kind of back to. And yeah, it's amazing. Like the phone first thing in the morning, I know everyone does it, but it's so hard not to. It's so hard not to. But yeah, that's something that I would always advise people to try not to do.
It's honestly so hard. And like for months now, I've been saying I don't want to use it before bed. Every freaking night, I find myself there scrolling the stupid phone, or like as soon as I wake up, I look at it, and like now the only thing that's worked for me has been to put my phone like a few meters before, like off where my bed is, so that I have to get up, turn my alarm off, see the affirmation, and then kind of just like, it's the first thing I see, and then I just get up and get on with my day. Whilst before, I like, turn my alarm off, lay in my bed, scroll on my Instagram. So tip for anyone who's struggling, know that yes, I'm a coach, but I fucking struggle with the simplest things as well.
Yeah, it's so true. And like, as you know yourself, like environment trumps motivation. So like sticking outside the door, or like, even having your gym clothes in the morning there, like you're not going to be always motivated. So like environment always trumps motivation. And
I love that. I've never heard that before, but it's so true.
Yeah. Because we're all fucking human. Like we can't always be motivated. So yeah, that's what I would advise.
Yeah. And like making it, I wonder if that was in that book as well. I read something about like making the habit like as easy as possible. So like just reminding yourself like to like put your book on your pillow, for example, and then you just like, you go to bed and like, oh, that's my book, and maybe I'll read something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's literally about making it easy for ourselves, I suppose. Yeah. That's in it. You're right. That's in Atomic Habits too.
Yeah, it's something like that. One of my friends, she was so obsessed with her phone, she literally had to get one of those lockers that like time locked on the on it, so she literally can't touch it, because otherwise she's like, I just can't put it away. Like I don't know what it is, I just can't do it.
But like our phones are designed, especially social media, these are just to grab our attention consistently, and like that is like, not to bring it always back to science, but that is literally like depleting our dopamine all the time. Like that is like, it's really detrimental to our dopamine levels, and that like dopamine is so important for motivation. So that is why we are struggling with motivation if we're on our phones all the time. So yeah, that's a big thing.
So is it because like you go on social media and you might follow all these like super hit influencers people and be like, oh, I don't look like that, and is that why you then don't want to go to the gym or like eat healthy? And
well, I suppose like it's basically to do with our motivation, and we only have a certain level of motivation that we can give, and I suppose like a baseline level of dopamine. And when we are using that up, like consistently scrolling through social media, looking at other people's goals and other people's dreams or their desires, or what they look like, we are actually using our own dopamine and our own motivation levels. So we should shift our perspective and look at it that way and say, oh shit, like I'm actually using a certain level of my motivation today. I'm looking at my phone. And even though it seems like a really low motivation activity, you are actually depleting your dopamine levels. So yeah, that's what I would say about the phone. Like I say this now as if like I'm a fucking angel at it myself. I'm really not. Like I'm still to crack the code, but I try.
Yeah, but it is easy to get a little bit obsessed with it, especially like when you have a job like ours as well, which is so online, and it's like you reply back to a message from like a client or a potential client, and then all of a sudden you're like stuck there looking at some random person's stories.
And you're like, how did I get here? And you're down right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, especially now with the whole suggested uses and stuff that always comes up in your feed. Like before, I never used to do that. Now it's just like, who's this person? Like, oh, she looks cool. I'm gonna click into her. And it's like, just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do.
Yeah. So I always like to know why people got into that specific industries. Like you should no one's just born knowing what they want to do. And I think that yours is so specific. Like I've never really heard of anyone who does what you do. So yeah, what was your journey to getting into what you're doing now?
So I lived in Dubai last year. Was it last year? Yeah. Jesus, sorry, I'm just trying to figure
Oh
out.
no,
Yeah,
time is flat,
yeah,
especially here, Bali.
yeah. So I lived in Dubai. Probably moved like nearly 2 years ago now. Actually, I moved there, and I was actually fresh out of college, and I had done psychology in my undergrad, and I was like, I'm just gonna go over and test the like. I always knew I wanted to do psychology, but I was like, I want to go over and just do a load of random shit and make sure it's psychology I want to do. So I
Mm.
went into real estate for a few months. I left that and then I was feeling really lost. I was like, what the fuck do I want to do with my life? And then I actually manifested a job in psychology, and I manifested it to a T. I was visualizing every morning, and it literally happened. When I talk about visualization, it actually, I don't know about some other people, but it's eerie how some of my visualizations come true to an actual T. Do you know what I mean? So my parents were over, my boyfriend and myself were living in Dubai, and my parents were over visiting us. And I was jobless at the time because I quit my real estate job. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do with my life now? I was only 22. Well, yeah, 22 at the stage, probably 21 probably. So I didn't have to have it all figured out. I knew that, but I was like, I wanted to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially at that age, you're like, I need to know everything.
Yeah, and I really we're never gonna know everything, that's the thing. But anyway, so I manifested this job, and I envisioned basically myself, my parents, and my boyfriend out for dinner, and me telling them that I got this job. And on the last night, we were walking into a restaurant, and I got a call from a job that I applied for 5 months prior to tell me I've got this role in psychology, and it's a job that I couldn't have gotten at home without a master's. So I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. And I sat in the restaurant and I told them, and I was like shivers because I'd literally envisioned this restaurant. It's all sitting there. I'd never even been to the restaurant before, and I visualized this moment, and it was insane. And things like that really reaffirmed to me how powerful these practices are. But yeah, so I did that, and then after a few weeks, I quit my job. It was honestly, yeah, it was just so unaligned to me, so not what I thought it to be, and it just goes to show that just because you manifest something to a T doesn't mean it's right for you. And I suppose I quit that job fairly rapidly, and I suppose I quit on the basis of how I felt and not other people would think of me for quitting a job so soon.
Mm.
And I think that it's important to what am I trying to say? It's important to differentiate. That's the word I'm trying to say. Differentiate between quitting on the basis of how you feel and not what other people would think of you. And quitting is something that we never want to do. But I suppose if you're in a position and you can't see yourself happy in a year's time, or getting that position being a stepping stone to getting you where you want to go, then why are you there? So
Mm.
that's what I had to be like, no. And then I left, came to Bali, and that was my spiritual little journey. I suppose I always had that spiritual side, but I was just on the piss every weekend in Dubai that I didn't really connect to it at all. So I came to Bali by myself for a month, and then my boyfriend joined me, and I was like, yeah, this is where it's at. So we came back then this year, and we were on our way to Sydney. We're supposed to be here for 4 weeks, and I'm now 5 months in. So but anyway, that's how I basically got into what I'm into today. I was like, I want to help people through this way, and positive psychology was always such an interest of mine.
Mm.
But I also saw, and this is probably a bit controversial, but I also saw a lot of, I suppose, airy fairy sides of self-development. And I don't mean airy fairy when I say spiritual, but because I'm very spiritual myself, but I mean people stuff on the internet that just wasn't true, I suppose. You know what I mean? And I was like, we need we need someone to come in and say, well, this is backed up by science. And sometimes everything can't be backed up by science because it's, obviously spiritual. But I suppose that's how I found that goal of bridging that gap between that self-development side and that like neuroscience side, because I always was so into neuroscience, and Huberman, honestly, like love him so much. So yeah, I suppose he actually really got me into neuroscience. And then that is basically how I got into it all. I suppose my dad was such a huge factor in growing up, and he would always talk to me about the power of visualization. Even when I was like 12 in sports and I could never score a goal, he'd be like, visualize, visualize, visualize. And he would talk about the power of your subconscious mind. And I just thought it went in one ear and out the other, but it obviously didn't.
Wow, I think it's so cool that your dad was doing that as well, because I think that a lot of our parents are very like unaware. They just kind of act, they're very unconscious. They don't really know why they're doing things or what they're thinking. They just have the same jobs and just do the same thing, do whatever their parents did. So I think that's freaking so cool that your dad was already into that stuff when you were little.
No, it is actually, it's amazing. And I kind of owe, I suppose, I owe all of that to him, because he was the one who got me into it, and he is so big on like the mind and body connection. He When I was probably young, he's gotten cancer like 2 or 3 times, and that cancer has been from chronic stress with work. And he's just so into and so fascinated by the mind and body connection, and that is probably why he is so so passionate about it.
Wow, so cool. You mentioned manifestation and visualization. That's a hard word for me to say. But it's something that I think a lot of people are like, yeah, just visualize it or manifest it and it will happen. But like, how would someone actually, because you said that you did it and you got the job even though it wasn't right for you, but you still got it, still happened. How would someone go if they're like, I don't know, live in Bali, I want to move to Bali, I want to be, or Thailand or wherever, and work as a, I don't know, hairdresser online or fitness coach online? Like, how would you go with visualizing something like that?
Okay, so first of all, you need to remove any limiting beliefs that you have about that goal, or about because when we visualize, we often don't take into account that we don't believe we are good enough for it, or we don't believe we're deserving of it. So first of all, we need to remove any blocks or negative thought patterns or limiting beliefs that we have, that we can achieve that. Secondly, visualize that, and visualize it specifically. Wake up every day, and I suppose it's a fine line between living in the future. I would say 3 times a week sit in that visualization for 5 minutes, but don't spend a lot longer in that, because we need to spend time acknowledging and appreciating where we are, and being happy and cultivating gratitude in order to attract that level of abundance back. And then lastly, I think the biggest manifesting myth is that you can visualize and not take aligned action. And that is like the biggest manifesting myth, I believe, to be. So you need to take aligned action. Like, yeah, that is the last step. And I think a lot of people get mixed up and think, just because they visualize something, like, why isn't it coming true? You need to take aligned action. And yeah, that's my tip.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. You mentioned about like removing limiting beliefs that you have about why you can't get to there. So a lot of the girls listening to this podcast, they are either personal trainers or fitness coaches or nutrition coaches. They either are, or they are becoming qualified, or they may be thinking about it. And I know from hosting workshops with them in the past that there's a lot of them who have like beliefs of like, people are going to judge me, I'm not going to be as good as that person, like why would I succeed if there's a million other fitness trainers out there? These are common things that I hear. So I guess, how would you then go about removing that belief for yourself? Is there like an easy process that people can do, or any meditation processes maybe?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I suppose the non-easier process, which would be probably the most powerful way, is I think, if you're really, 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 really struggling with your limiting beliefs and you've tried to overcome them, I would suggest therapy, because our limiting beliefs all have a root. And sometimes, our limiting beliefs are subconscious, and we need to make the subconscious conscious. But in order to do that, it can be really difficult to access that. So I would say for a lot of people that therapy is a really good option. You know, that when we talk about breakthroughs, we're talking about why we have that behavior, why we have that thought pattern. And going to therapy can really help us understand our why. When we understand our why, it can be a lot easier to overcome. And then what I would say for people that do understand their limiting beliefs and are struggling to overcome them, something really, really simple is the mantras in meditation. And, you know, like listening to an affirmation soundtrack around that specific limiting belief before you go asleep and while you sleep. Because our subconscious mind is working, as I said, the moments before we go asleep and while we sleep. And listening to an affirmation soundtrack can be such a powerful way to reprogram some of those deeply rooted beliefs. And it's not a, you know, it's not a case where you wake up, you listen to an affirmation soundtrack, you wake up and you're like, grand, like, you know, that's me sorted, like, you know, about
I'm perfect that
yeah, literally. And you know, when like it's a daily process, I think. And you know, we all have these limiting beliefs and then they creep back in. You think you're over them and then they creep back in. And something so simple like even fear of judgment, you know, I know myself, like I've struggled with that so much in the past. And I think coming from like a small town in Ireland, when you do anything like remotely different, like people like are going to judge you. And, you know, but, and I'm like, oh, I've overcome that. No bother. That's grand. And then I go to do something a bit like, you know, you keep moving and you're like, oh, fuck it. That's not done yet. So it's just a process about, you know, like coming back to your, why you have that belief and then incorporating the right tools to help you overcome them.
Yeah, definitely I agree with everything that you said, and definitely recommend working with a coach and therapy. Like not being afraid to put that investment into yourself. And I think especially us as coaches, sometimes we have this belief that we have to know everything and be the best at everything, and we can't be vulnerable, and we can't like say that we're struggling, or that we, you know, have these limiting beliefs ourselves, that we have to be perfect. Like I know that when I first started coaching, I was very like, I can't like ever post that I'm sad, or post that I'm like having a bad day, or that I'm struggling with my business, or whatever it was. Like I felt like I had to put it up this front of being perfect. So I was very like resistant to getting help to work on my own mental health. And I was going through like a lot of stuff when I first started my business. And if I can get any tips to anyone who's just starting off, like, yeah, a business coach to help you grow a business is great, but what's going to make the most difference in you is having like someone like yourself, or like me, or someone who would actually go a bit deeper and understand your mindset and like your limiting beliefs and how you can overcome them, and doing that work, because that's actually like, you can have the best business strategy in the world. If you don't actually believe it yourself, that's nothing's going to happen for you.
100%. And it all comes back to your ability to like back yourself and have that self-belief. Like that is what I've figured out a lot. Like it's so simple, but I'm like, you just need to fucking back yourself.
Yeah.
And that is literally it. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, you're so right.
Yeah, and what you said as well about like you think you've overcome it, and then they like creep back in. I was like, yes,
yeah,
related.
Yeah,
so much.
So true.
I'm like, that's healed now, and then I'm like,
yeah, literally, and you're like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah. So I think you're doing so many amazing things, and you've already accomplished so much, and you're freaking so young, so I can't even stop what else is going to happen for you. What are your future plans? Like, are you going to be stay here in Bali? You mentioned Sydney. Like, will the Australian market be over there?
So yeah, my big plans are probably retreats, host more retreats, and I suppose stay in Bali for a little while and then head to Sydney and bring what I'm doing over there, and slowly create that ripple effect. But that's the plans. That is the plans. But Bali has me for another few months anyway. But yeah, host retreats, worldwide retreats are coming next year, so I'm excited. And yeah, continue with the seminars, and hopefully some sort of a meditation app, I'm gonna say, in the next I don't know, probably 9 months.
Wow. I think did my video just freeze?
I think so. Yeah,
I have like this great face on there.
It's so I love it. But yeah, they're all goals in the future, and I suppose when we say our goals out loud, you know, it gives us accountability. So that's my future path.
Amazing. So is your boyfriend also going to move over there, or like is he?
Yes, yeah, he is actually doing his farm regional work at the moment. So any of my fellow Irish gals will know the struggle. So he's gonna do that and get that over the way.
Yeah.
And then we are gonna reunite in Sydney in a few months' time. So yeah.
No plans of going back to Ireland then?
No. For short visits, 100%. I miss my family so much. Like every 6 months, my goal to go back, but not anytime soon. Unfortunately.
I get it.
What about yourself?
I don't think I'll ever move back to Sweden, but who knows? Like I don't want to say like ever, because you never really know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's so exciting with the meditation app. That's something I was gonna ask you. Like, do you have any like tracks, affirmations, like that you can?
Yeah, so I have my YouTube channel, which has a few meditations there, and I bring out meditation courses. So the next one will probably be it'll be in a few months' time. So yeah, keep an eye out. But I have free meditations there on YouTube, and I'll be releasing my next meditation course in the next while. So that'll keep them all going.
Amazing. Oh, that's so exciting. I'm definitely going to check out your YouTube meditations then, because I'm always looking for new ones to do. I think it's like, I like doing it with just music, but I think having someone actually guiding you there, like I think you just like take it to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, Alana, thank you so much again for coming on. But before we go, I wanted to give you the opportunity to plug yourself if you are taking on any new clients, or like where people, obviously we'll link your Instagram in the show notes, but how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, amazing. So any female entrepreneurs or personal trainers, or yes, any female entrepreneurs in general, what I do is I go in and I talk to their clients and give them webinars on the neuroscience of mindfulness and meditation. So I have a few spaces opening up next month with regards to webinars. So I do that. I work with probably a very, very small number of one-on-ones, and spaces probably won't be opening that for like 2 months. But yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Align with Alana, and my YouTube is Align with Alana as well. So you'll find me there, and yeah, and my meditation courses and everything will all be there as well. So thank you so much for having me, Ellen. It was such a pleasure. I had such a lovely morning talking to you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, definitely check her out. Even just like the affirmations that you posted, or the mantras you posted this morning, I was like, oh, I love this. I screenshot all of them and put them like on my wall.
Oh, stop. Thank you. Well, thank you so much again for having me, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, just really enjoyed the morning. So thank you.
Of course. Well, guys, you know the drill by now. If you like this episode, which I'm sure you will, please take a screenshot of it and put it on your stories. Tag myself, tag Alana, tag Women's Fitness Academy. Let us know what you liked about it, like if anything was new for you. What you really could relate to with this podcast. Like we love to actually connect with you and get a proper face to who's listening to this. So make sure you do that. But Alana, again, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure to have you.
And thank you so much again, Ellen, for having me. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye, everyone.